So here in a minute, I'm going to show you how I like to build plant spirit altars. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the hows and whys and whats, right? So first, what is a plant spirit altar? For me, this is an opportunity for us to carve out intentional space in our lives via our physical space to dedicate to connecting with the plants. Now, ultimately, the ideal is always to be able to go outside and sit with a plant that you're working with, or sit with a tree, or in a sacred space that you have a connection to. But really, that's just not always possible. I know where I live, it can be really hard to find privacy sometimes. Sometimes I go out and I find the perfect spot only to have somebody turn on a leaf blower and kind of screw up my vibe, right? Sometimes folks don't feel safe, going out and being in these vulnerable situations in public spaces. We don't always have, private or secure backyards that we can go to. So I really think that an indoor plant spirit altar is a really beautiful concession, a really nice convenience for us to continue to do the work when the weather is inclement or when we can't find any peace and quiet, right? And as I've told you before, and you'll hear in all my videos, I live right in the middle of a city, right? So these are things that I've had to work and navigate. So these altars then are spaces that we've carved out in our physical world. We've dedicated a space in our lives to those plant spirits, and that means something. Also, I think, on the internal level, when we dedicate the top of a bookshelf or a small table or a section of our working altar to the plants, it says something to ourselves, right? That this is meaningful to us. It's something we're serious about and that we want to do. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that over time, the plant spirit altar can become a space of liminality through the work that we do, because we're kind of reaching through the hedge that separates the human world from the plant world. We start to create a little bit of permeability, right? A little bit of thinness. What was solid now becomes slightly porous. And so these spaces, whether they be outdoor or indoor, really, take on being numinous. They take on liminality, and they start to make the work easier. They start to kind of lubricate the work a little bit so that it flows and moves a little more easily, and that's always nice. So that's a little bit about what these spaces are. And again, I'm going to show you how I might build one here in a second and talk about some of the important parts of it. The other thing is, what do you do with it? Once you have it, once it's set up and established, what kinds of things can you do? So the first is medicine work. Sitting with an individual plant spirit for at least a month, longer is ideal, gives us an opportunity to connect with that plant and learn directly from them and create an allyship with them, whether that's a long-lasting allyship or just for the time that we're sitting. Over on our Patreon group, our online community, we have these community plant spirit sits that we do every single month, and some people fall in love with the plants that we sit with, and some people, it's a great learning experience and they're excited to move on to the next one, at the end. So these can be really nice spaces where we can kind of focus on one plant for a month or more. And in the example that I'm going to show you here in a minute, I'm going to put a space together for calendula, right? Because we just are about to wrap up our month-long sit with calendula. So I'm going to just kind of show you how I put together a little focus space, a little altar space dedicated to calendula. Meditation, whatever kinds of plant spirit meditations you do, journey work, spirit flight, breathing exercises, all the different things that we talk about around here, you can do that with your plant spirit altar as a way to focus, as a way to connect, as a way to reach through the hedge. This can be a really lovely place for us to make offerings to the plant spirits, to craft and empower herbal remedies, medicines, and bits of magic, to perform bits of herbal magic, and really just like the world tree, kind of becomes an axis or a spine in our lives, like a place where we can come and find some stillness, where we can kind of regroup and come back to our center. And that's a good reason, I think, to establish that kind of relationship and to create that space in your life. Upkeep and maintenance is also something important. If you build a plant spirit altar, don't build it and then ignore it. We are ultimately creating a space where our green allies are being invited further into our lives. So don't send out invitations and have your guests show up to an empty table. Try to spend time every single day sitting, offering gratitude, meditating, doing works, whatever, taking your herbal medicines even that you work with every day at that altar can be a really beautiful space to just go deeper, right? Instead of just taking the tincture on the way out the door or swallowing the capsules, it will invite you to sort of slow down and to check in and to really connect with those plants that are bringing you their virtues. If you're keeping offerings or making offerings, obviously keep them clean. If they get gross, get rid of them. Whether it's a candle or an oil lamp, which is what I usually do, or more. Start out simple. Establish a good rhythm and a good routine. Make sure that you can be dedicated and that you don't overwhelm yourself. And then you can add over time. But really, simplicity is key. Consistency is very, very important here. So keep the space clean, keep it beautiful. There should always be a sense of harmony and peace in those spaces. All of that is very important. So with that, let's head over to, we're going to go to just the top of one of my bookshelves at home, and I'm going to build you a plant spirit altar as an example of what I might do. And I'm going to show you a couple of the key things that I like to have. So here we have this top of one of my bookshelves, and I've cleared it off and cleaned it off, and I've set this green cloth on top. You can use any kind of cloth or covering or none at all. I like to have them because it protects the bookshelf, but also it can bring in some color, right? So maybe you choose a color that's relevant to the plant you're working with, or like me, I use green a lot for obvious reasons. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and this is really important in my tradition and the way that I work, is establish some kind of sacred center. So here I'm going to put an icon or an image of the world tree. And this stands for establishing a sacred center, establishing sacred space, but this tree also sort of represents the plant spirits, all plants, the green realm, the realm of the plants, the other world, right? So I always begin here as a way to dedicate this space to the plant spirits and to open up the gates, drawing down through the canopy, drawing up through the roots, meeting in the middle, heart to heart. This is kind of what I'm meditating on when I add this thing to the altar. The next thing that's very important to all of the work I do is having a living flame. So here I'm going to put an oil lamp onto the altar to bring light and warmth. Remember that plants are light eaters. So when we kindle a flame, a living flame on our altar, we are catching a bit of the sun. We're offering light and warmth to the plants, which they like. But we're also illuminating the space and illuminating and blessing the path. So I'll take a moment here because I know people will ask. This is olive oil that has calendula been soaking in it for a few nights, and then I use just a oil lamp, floating oil lamp wicks to put on top. So this particular lamp, in addition to being on the altar, also is expressing the virtues of calendula. Calendula is part of that oil. So I like to do this with most lamps that I make, always putting the dried herbs in there. It's very important. The next thing I'm going to add here is a watercolor picture that I did of calendula. I really always like to do these when I'm connecting with a plant so that I can learn their botany, get to know their colors, and I find that it's just very meditative. So I almost always will draw or watercolor a picture of a plant, and then I can use that picture on my plant spirit altar, which is really nice. Then I'm going to add some dried plant material to further bring that plant spirit in. So there's some dried leaves and flowers here from calendula in my garden. I'm going to add a sachet that I made for calendula, which I will actually pick up every morning and put into my pocket with prayers and carry that with me throughout my day, and then it will go back onto this altar to rest at night. So this is again for a month-long plant spirit journey with calendula, so I really want to maintain and nourish that connection all month long. You certainly don't have to do that, but this is part of how I like to work. If this was a general plant spirit altar, which I do keep, I would maybe have a whole collection of sachets for different plants that I work with and that I'm close with. Another thing I'm going to add here is a small vial of handcrafted calendula oil, right? So that every day when I come sit with my altar and meditate and connect with this plant, I can also take some of their medicine and rub that on my palms and really kind of connect with them in that way. So very simple. I've gathered things that connect with the plant, that relate to the plant, that make me feel close to the plant. You could add all kinds of other things, sigils, handmade incenses, animals that relate, deity images, whatever, makes that space feel beautiful and open and sacred to you. What makes it work, works, right? So this is an example of a plant spirit altar dedicated to one plant spirit. I'm going to set the altar up, work with this plant for a month, then probably take that down or change it to the next plant we work with. But again, you could make a more permanent version of this that represents your relationship to whichever plants you're very close to, whichever ones you're working with in the moment, and of course some kind of representation of the plant spirits all or the green realm, which should reflect your visionary experiences, how you experience those things in meditation and spirit flight and dream work. We should try to make our altars reflect that to make that bridge. So hopefully this is inspiring to you. If you do this kind of work, I would love to hear how you craft plant spirit altars, what you like to keep on them, any little traditions or things that you like to do. And it's always fun to see what other people are up to. You can share that in the comments below. And until next time, take care, blessings of peace and plenty. I'll see you soon.